bit of honey. Thank you for joining us for this week's live Q&A. It's the start of spring here in the southern hemisphere, and that's an exciting time for all beekeepers everywhere pretty much, because the flowers really start to hit their bloom. Now this year the spring's actually later than usual, so we're only just starting to see its effects now. Often it starts in winter for us here in this location, but it's amazing how location specific it is. Sometimes you get the difference between here and 2 hours drive that way will be really different in terms of your seasonality. So it's one of the many joys of beekeeping, is you really learn about what's going on in your season and how the seasons differ each year and how the rain affects the flowering and so on. But it's a good idea to tap out some of your honey in that early spring, making space in the hive so that the bees, when they're bringing a lot of nectar, have somewhere to put it. Otherwise they'll put it down here where the queen is needing to lay, and that will be a bit of a swarm trigger, if you like. So I'm turning that key there. Do it in segments, makes it easier, unless you've got a really strong arm. And I can see that honey coming down, and oh, it's a nice light colour here, showing that this could even be some of the spring flowers already. We usually get the lighter colours in the spring and the darker colours in the winter, and it's a beautiful thing to taste all of the differences, and I can't wait. Oh, yum. We're not quite getting the spring flow yet. I can't taste those floral bursts we get here, and I can't see it in the trees yet, but this is a beautiful auburn honey coming in, and it actually tastes quite a lot like the macadamia, which is down in the valley below. If you've got questions, put it in the comments and we'll get to answering those. No such thing as a silly question. We dedicate the first Q&A of each month to beginner beekeeping, so don't be shy, chime in with any kind of beginner questions you have. It's a great place to ask them. We all started off as new beekeepers once. So ask away in the comments below. Trace will read out those questions and I'll attempt to answer them. Look at that honey just flowing out. Isn't that just beautiful? It's a amazing thing just to watch honey streaming right out of your hive. And the great thing is it needs no further processing or no processing at all. That is the product that the bees have made, and it's perfect as it is to take to the table and enjoy. And lucky for us, they often store more than they need, and we can share some too, provided we look after them and give them a good house.
Great, so we've got a question. Scott's tuning in. He'll have a little bit of a different climate to us. He's in the UK and it's coming into autumn and the girls are really busy. Most of the super frames are full. So Scott's question is, how do you recommend taking the super off for winter in the UK?
Okay, in the UK, very different climate, so local knowledge is key. However, what you need to be thinking about is stores for your bees to survive through a long cold winter. We don't get a long cold winter here, and certainly not a winter at all as far as the European honeybee is concerned. So for you in the UK, you're going to need to find out how much stores a typical hive needs to survive the months in your particular location. And as said earlier, it can really differ even in a short drive away. But basically you need stores, and if they are a bit light on, there's not much stores in the hive, because the honey, you probably know this already, is their carbohydrate, that's their energy, that's what they need to survive on and keep themselves warm and so on. It's their fuel. So you'll need to make sure there's enough honey, and if there isn't, you can feed them a thick syrup, 2-to-1 ratio, sugar to water, cook that up, put it in any kind of feeder you like. You can go under the roof here. You can make a really simple one if you don't have a feeder to go under the roof by putting that syrup, once it's cooled, into a Ziploc bag, put it on top of the inner cover there, poke some pinholes in it, take the plug out. The bees will come up and just lap up that syrup and use it for some stores. So having enough stores is the number one thing. The next thing I would say is remove the queen excluder. So if you're deciding to leave a super or multiple honey supers on the hive with stores in them for the bees to consume, what's going to happen is your bees are going to cluster together to keep warm and then move up the hive to where the stores are. Now, if you've got a queen excluder in the way, your queen will be left behind. So, really good idea to take out that queen excluder for the winter to allow the queen to move freely with the cluster. And that way, hopefully, fingers crossed, she'll be there for you in the springtime. If you are going to store flow frames away for the winter, which some people do, some people don't, some people leave them on the hive, some people will like to store them, there's basically two methods. One is harvest the honey, rinse out what's left with a hose after you've taken the frames out of the hive, let them dry in the shade and then put them away for the winter. Or even better, if you do have a deep freeze or a really cold location, then you can put them in there and that will just stand them still in time, ready to go back onto the hive. So that way you can leave them partially filled or still with nectar and put them back onto the hive when the bees are ready for a larger hive again. They're ready to really store some nectar in those frames. So if anybody else has got input into answers in the thread, please chime in, let us know, especially if you know the answer to the question or you're in the location in the UK there.
Great. So it's a couple of people wondering if we had any swarms this season.
No, not yet. Typically we do get swarms earlier than this, and in the last month of winter we get the first swarms occurring, usually when the citrus hits full blossom is a bit of a marker. Now the citrus is only just popping now in our area, so things are running probably 3 weeks behind last year and most years, and I think that was simply to do with we had quite a lot of southerly wind influence and rain and still very cold nights, so that temperature trigger didn't set the flowers in motion, which means the bees didn't have the availability of nectar, which means that didn't trigger the hives to really the queen to lay lots and lots of eggs. So environmental factors, climatic factors really affect the whole seasonality and what's happening in your hive.
Thanks, Steve. I'm not sure, but a few people have noticed a few ants on the hive and just wondering, are you worried about the ants? I can't see them, but...
There is a couple of ants around. Now, what we could do is activate these ant guards. That would be a good idea if those ants were annoying us. Now, what you need to do if those ants are annoying you, there are some ants in the world that can be a problem to a hive, but generally they're not. They're just a cosmetic problem, and for us here we don't have any ants that will bother the bees themselves, but it's annoying when they nest behind these covers and things, and typically when it's wet like it's been, they'll come up out of the ground and find a nice cozy home up here. So what we do is then make sure you're cutting foliage away from the hive, and then you can activate these ant guards, or you can create your own liquid barrier if you like. So you can put cooking oil in there, or Vaseline might even be a better choice. Put it right in here, and you can even, we've left a little pocket underneath there for some more, and what that'll mean is the ants can't cross over. If you've got large ants, then leave that cover up a little bit. The smaller ants you can screw all the way down, and we've left a gap there that they can't cross. Now what you'll need to do is brush those ants away from behind the covers, pull the foliage back, put a liquid barrier in your ant guards or make some other kind of barrier, and you'll need to do that a couple of times, and what happens is the ant problem will go away till next time. Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, Seeds. Look, just a comment, MT's just got a super lifter and can't wait to use it. Just think the build quality is great on the super lifter. So that's pretty good.
Ah, fantastic. We've just had so many, even very touching reviews about the super lifter, because we built it really to solve a problem that beekeepers have had for many decades, and that's lifting the heavy boxes off. So all of a sudden people are getting a new lease in their life as far as beekeeping is concerned. They can continue to do their brood inspections, and even people that are really very fit and strong are really appreciating the help it gives you in terms of a quick, easy way just to flip the box up, and it just makes it a lot easier, which brings about more inspiration to get out there and into your hives. And we'll give you a demo. How about we open a hive and give you another demonstration of that lifter. If you haven't seen it, or if you've got any questions about it, then you can chime in. Now this hive here, there's a lot of honey's come out already just while we've been talking away, and it's a beautiful thing. Great idea if you've got honey still in your hives to take some out. If it's the springtime, make some room. Make sure your brood nest doesn't get honey bound, it's called. You want to make sure there is lots of room for the queen to lay down here in the brood box. And if it's full of honey, she can't do that. If you're going to walk away and do other things in your apiary, you don't want to risk the bees all coming and piling into the jar. So we're just going to cover that up, making sure you're squeezing it around under the tube here. And we can leave it just like that, and we'll go and do some beekeeping. Meanwhile, keep those questions coming in.
Great. So Blaze is wondering, do you buy bees or do they come just fly into the hive?
So you can get them to fly into a hive, as you say, and that's called a bait hive, but it's unusual, and I wouldn't recommend that way to start. But if you do want to make a bait hive, what you do, and springtime is the perfect time to do it, and if you're near other beehives, then you really increase your chances of the bees moving right into your hive. The 12 will hang temporarily on a branch, and then they'll go through a democratic process of voting, and they'll dance all over that swarm ball, and they'll work out where they're going, and hopefully that'll be your bait hive. And if you put a little bit of lemongrass oil, or there's even a product called Swarm Commander, in a Ziploc bag in that hive, poke a little pinhole in it for a little slow release, you will find that might increase the chances of a swarm moving right into your hive. But more commonly, you just take a split from a friend by taking some of the frames out of the brood box. We showed you how to do that in a couple of live streams ago. You can dial back and have a look at that, or you can just get some bees off a bee breeder. That's probably the easiest way. They come in a little box, and it's called a nucleus. You've got frames in there, you've got a queen in there. It's a going little mini hive, and you simply put it where you want to situate your hive in your garden. Get out your bee suit and smoker, and on a nice day like this, mid-morning to mid-afternoon, not too cold or rainy, you transfer those bees to your flow hive brood box, look after them, and they'll grow from there. So that's probably the easiest way to go. We've got tuition on all of these methods if you have a look at the beekeeper.org, or also on our Facebook and YouTube channel. No such thing as a silly question. Chime on in. Beginner beekeeping today. It's also the start of spring, and it's honey month in the USA too, which is a beautiful thing to appreciate honey. So send us your pictures of harvesting. Let us know what the amazing flavours of honey are that are coming in your region. So this little hive here was queenless, and let's see whether they have raised a new queen. Now, I'm going to need to get this smoker going, and then we'll give you a demonstration of the super lifter. So I'm going to speed things up a little bit here by using this blowtorch right in the bottom, like that. Wear your gloves if you're new to beekeeping, don't burn yourself, but that is a quick way to accelerate. And our smokers have this nice inner basket that allows you to do this, but there it is, going really nicely in a hurry, and we can pop that right in to your smoker. We'll give it a few puffs like this, and we'll leave it there at the entrance so the returning foragers get a nice whiff of the smoke, and that'll help change their mood into hopefully a nice calm demeanour for us to use the super lifter. Okay, so next, of course, wear your gloves. I've got mine at the ready here. If you're new to beekeeping, wear your gloves and make sure you're doing both zips up, and then actually all three zips up, and then the cover over the top. Okay, so our super lifter, we'll make sure that smoker keeps going. Is here. You can choose which side to set it up. We've got a slope back there, so we might go this way in case the leg's not long enough, or in case the ground's in the way of the leg rolling around. So we've tried to build it with choices for you depending on how you set up. How you do this is you just pick up these handles, you move your hands apart, you roll your wrists in, so it's in this configuration. That is step one. It's written on the handle. Step two is on the lower brackets there, and they go onto your load point screws, which you can see there. Then step three is up onto your upper load point screws. Step four is written here, lift the handle. After your first couple of goes, you really get the hang of it, but the idea is, with very little effort, you're cracking the hive open, doing what was once a lot of hard work. Now, if you get into a situation, which I can see here, making sure you put the leg down all the way and that this is in like that, but I can see that the frames have come up. Now, hefting that box off in the conventional way, that gets really messy, super annoying, and the bees really don't like that point where you lift the box off and the frames come with it, because you're often lifting on an angle. The super lifter we've set up in a way so it gives you that perfect opportunity just to poke them down if that happens. See that? And I can see that a little bit of smoke would be helpful, so I'll add that here, and I'll just pop those frames down, and then we're ready to go. There we go. One more. Okay. So if we clean the wax off the top of the frame, that's very unlikely to happen, but it's very easy to deal with the lifter compared to normal. Okay, now this is a great handle here, so you're taking off that cover, and then it's just a case of lifting like that, and you can roll it over in a much easier way. We've also got handles that can connect on here if you want it even easier again, and really useful for when you have the double box lift, which can be really quite heavy. If you've got any questions, chime in. We're going to be looking in here and seeing if this hive is now queen right. It's been 3 weeks, I think, since a frame was put in here with eggs in it. Hopefully they've raised a new queen. So this is a really enjoyable part of beekeeping, is getting in and seeing what is going on, and the springtime here is an exciting time. You always want to go sideways first, so otherwise you can risk lifting the top bar out of the end bar. Okay, Now, what we got there? Beautiful. Okay, not seeing any sign there of, we've got drone brood. This could have been the frame that was put in. Let's have a see. Can't see any writing on it. But what we're looking down the cells for is eggs, showing we have a laying queen. And you'll need to put it up to the sunlight and look down those cells. And what you'll see in the bottom is a tiny little grain of rice. And I'm not seeing any there, but I am seeing some drone brood, which is typical in the springtime. And laying workers can lay unfertilized eggs because they haven't mated, and they can turn into drones. And sometimes your hive goes queenless, and if you don't catch it early enough, the workers start laying eggs and they become all male bees in your hive. Slowly turns into a bunch of male bees called the drones, which don't do any work around the hive at all. There's one there. It's just emerged from its cell. Look at its big eyes compared to the worker bees. And they're more teddy bear shaped, rounded shape. And your hive won't survive if there's only males. So let's keep looking and see if we can find some evidence of a new queen. Now, I haven't put frame rests on, but it would be a nice idea. I'm just going to lean that up there just in case the queen is on there. At least she could walk back in. And we'll keep looking through this hive. Okay. There we go. Another empty frame, one little cell of brood there. Well, that's about it. So we're trying to get the light right, looking down the cells. If you wear glasses, you'll need them at this point because the little eggs down the cells can be hard to see. Not seeing any there. Also a quick scan for a queen bee. So you could have a mated queen, and also a sign that they've raised a queen cup, a queen cell rather. We'll have a look for that. Now I can see there evidence of a queen cell that's been torn down, but it's not good enough evidence for me to say that one emerged from that cell. It looks more like a tear down. Any more questions coming in as we keep looking for a queen or some eggs or young larvae?
Yep, Cedar. HB Collective is asking, what should you do if your flow super is only half full of honey as you're going into winter?
Okay, if it's only half full of honey as you're going into winter, it will depend where you are in the world. If you're around here, subtropical region, then you don't have to worry too much because we get flowers in the winter. But if you're in an area that has a lot, a long cold winter, then that is something to be aware of, something to get some local knowledge on. So let us know exactly where you are, and hopefully some people with local knowledge will chime in and let you know whether you need to feed your bees, feed up some stores to make sure they've got enough to get through a long cold winter ahead. Now what I'm seeing here is only drones, so looks like we've got an issue in this hive where we have laying workers and no queen. So people coming into the springtime in the colder areas will be checking their hives to see if they do have a queen, to see if she's survived through the winter, and see what the hive is looking like as they start to get on their feet, bring in the resources and build stores again. Now, this hive might need another, either a queen put in or a queen cell from another hive, or at least some eggs so they can have a crack at raising another queen themselves. We'll keep looking. Okay.
Seeds, if you're doing a merge with 2 brood boxes and you're doing the newspaper between the boxes,
Yep.
how long do you leave the newspaper on for?
You can leave it on permanently because the bees will remove it. So if you put 2 layers of newspaper, that's a typical amount, make sure you put some holes for ventilation. You've got one box up the top from another hive, you've got another box below, and you're doing that to slow the merge of the 2 colonies. As they chew away that newspaper, they will get used to each other's pheromones and there'll be less fighting. So you can just leave it there, the bees will rip it up and throw it out the entrance, and you can enjoy watching that process happen.
Now Mama Heenan's saying it's the first winter with the bees, and I'm just wondering, when is it okay to check the hive again, going into winter?
Okay, let's find out whereabouts in the world you are, but basically as you are thinking, beekeepers do refrain from opening a hive if it's really cold. Now 15 degrees Celsius, somebody convert that to Fahrenheit for me, is the temperature in which we try not to put open brood outside the hive, or they could suffer from cold shock and you could lose some of that open brood. So you might like to bear that in mind, but also local knowledge will be key to find out when you'll be likely to be opening your hives and doing your inspections. Of course, if you've got an issue with a hive, even if you technically shouldn't be opening it, but if you know that the hive's really light and they don't have enough stores, you're still better off opening it or getting some feed to them somehow. And you may need to give them some fondant or something like that to keep them alive through till the next spring. But all going well, you organise your hives in the fall, you make sure that there's enough stores to survive, and then you just leave them closed up. And when you get the next warm days where the bees are starting to fly again, then that's when you can open your hive and see how they overwintered.
Thanks. Now Swaney's asking, not sure where they are, but they checked their hive this morning, the flow hive, and just noticed, Cedar, the frames are all in the closed position, but there was some honey in the trough of the flow frame. Any ideas how this is happening?
Yes. I will get to answering that in 1 second. What I've seen is good. I'm seeing young larvae glistening down these cells. I'll shake the bees off so you can get a better look at this frame, but that's a great sign that this hive is back on its feet with a laying queen. Of course, we have to look at the cell size. I can see the cell size is small. So you've got drone size up here. This is a naturally drawn comb, so they can do whatever they like. And you've got larger size there, smaller size cells here, smaller size of the workers. The large size will be the drone sized cells. And I'm very happy to see glistening white larvae at the bottom of these cells here in worker cells. So we know we have a queen here somewhere, and all is well. So that's good news for this little hive. Now, getting back to your question, you said some honey's coming through into the trough area, even though your frames are in closed position. And that's an interesting observation, and some hives will do that, where perhaps they don't seal the parts as well as some bees will, and you'll get a little bit of honey coming through into this trough area here. So well done on observing that. So what you can do is sometimes just turning this will unblock what's called a little leak back point here. Now we put that in specifically so that if honey comes through after harvest or during when they're filling it, it will just go back into the hive for the bees. But bees will be bees and they'll block it up. So each time you harvest, we've made it automatically unblock for you so that you don't have to think about it. But in between harvests, and if you're seeing honey build up, then you can manually unblock that point, sometimes by just turning this. Now, what that did is dislodge this little piece of wax they'd poked in there. And now, if any honey was coming through it could just go back to the bees. Sometimes you need to poke a little stick in there, or you can use the end of your flow key or anything you really and just unblock it. Now, if the honey's been sitting in there for a long time and you're in a humid climate, it could potentially start to ferment in that area. So another thing you could do is taste that honey, and if it tastes sour, then put a tube in there and discard it, and then unblock it. If it tastes fine, then you can unblock it, let it go back to the bees, put your cap back in, and we've made a little ridges around here, which means that ants can't get through, but a bee's tongue can. So when you unblock that area, you can enjoy watching the bees' tongues. If you've got a macro lens on your phone or something, you can get a really nice view of their feathery tongues licking up through that leg back point as they consume the honey that's coming back into the hive.
Thanks, Ed. Paul wants to know, do you know if Varoa mite has gone north of the Sunshine Coast, which is about 3 hours maybe north of here?
Write in, let us know if you have any intel on the spread of Varoa near the Sunshine Coast. It is spreading out to the adjoining states, started in New South Wales, and it came to this particular area at the start of this year, and the Varoa mites are thriving and well, and it's a new learning curve for us as beekeepers, but they're quite manageable, and we join the rest of the world in managing them and making sure that our hives don't get overrun by the little mites. It's especially important in what's called the build-up phase, which is what we're in now, where when it first comes to your area, unmanaged hives might be dying out, and your bees might go to rob the remaining resources and bring back all of the mites that are looking for a new host. And so you can find the numbers really increase quickly from what's called mite bombs. It's looking like it'll take about 12 to 18 months after it comes to an area to get over that hump, and then things will settle down after that into normal management like the rest of the world does with Varoa mites. But the important thing is to be on the lookout as you are, which is fantastic, and also to be doing something about it, making sure you're checking, making sure you're doing some form of treatment to make sure that those mites don't get to too high levels.
Great. Now Kane's tuning in from Adelaide, and it's first spring with the flow hive, so a bit excited. The brood box isn't overflowing with bees yet, but they've got some good weather on the way, so Kane's wondering if they should put the super on yet.
Okay, so, sorry, where are we?
In Adelaide.
Adelaide.
Yeah.
So it's probably a little early in Adelaide, but follow some local knowledge if you're in that area. But the time to put on the super is when you look in the box here and they are using every frame and there's lots of bees. If you're still getting cold nights and you put it on a bit early, you'll only be making it a bit harder for them. If you're in the warm time, then it doesn't matter. You can put the box on and they will they'll be able to keep their hive warm. So you want to avoid the situation of making a big empty hive for a small colony, or they might not be able to keep themselves warm enough if you get a cold snap. So my guess is you'll be waiting a little bit longer before you're putting your super on in Adelaide, but correct me if you've got some local knowledge from that area.
Now, Frogaholic has a brother who got a really old unkempt flow hive, very dirty and lots of mites inside. Honey was almost black, looked like Guinness or Coke, tastes really good. Just wondering, is it still okay to eat? He's completely in love with it and slowly in the process of trying to clean it up without upsetting the bees. Any tips for brother of Frogaholic?
Great. Yes. In my books, if the honey tastes good, then it is good. There are some exceptions in the world where you can get some poisonous honeys or even psychedelic honeys, but for the most part, honey's good, whether it's dark or it's light. We have some very dark honey in this location, in fact almost black in the jar, and it becomes often the favourite when I do honey tastings because it's so unique and different. and I tend to gravitate towards the very light, really floral, blow your taste buds off flavours, and but consistently the favourite is the very dark, more malty tones that come in here in the winter time, which is off the heathland banksias and things. And something can happen in the hive where if the honey's left in there for a long time, which it sounds like your hive has been on its own for a while and hasn't been harvested for a while, you can get the honey getting darker and darker. So that's probably what you're experiencing. It was a dark honey to begin with, but it's changing to even darker as time goes on. And it sounds like it's really good honey.
Yeah. A couple of drone questions, Seeds. One is, can you show us a drone? And also, could you explain again what a drone bee does? And what do you mean by they don't do any work?
Okay, so in the hive, most of the bees are female worker bees. So they are female, they have the same makeup as a queen. In fact, any of these worker bees could have been a queen if they were fed royal jelly for their entire gestation or larvae stage. As soon as they're fed plant proteins on day 3, they will turn into a queen. So that's queens and worker bees. Now, the queen's job is an egg layer. The worker bees do all of the work. So basically what happens is in the hive you might have up to say 50,000 bees might be worker bees, maybe 600 might be drones, the male bees, and usually just one queen. And that's the makeup of a typical strong hive. Now, the drone's job is important, but it's not work in the hive. The drone's job is to spread genetics. So the male bees will take off from the hive each day, especially in the springtime, and they will fly looking for what's called a drone congregation area. And that's where all the male bees hang out and wait for a queen to come flying by. It's usually in a lower, less windy part of a valley or an open area or a football field, places like that. I happen to have a little valley below where I live, and I've regularly experienced the mating flight, which is an extraordinary thing, where the queen is flying full tilt and the drones are trying to keep up with her, and you'll get maybe 30 or 60 drones chasing that queen, and that they come together and they roll in the air and they spread apart again and they come together. It looks a bit like fish in the ocean when they're moving in these really interesting ways, but it's a high-speed chase. And what's happening is the first one to catch the queen gets to mate, and unfortunately for the drone, he will get his genitals ripped off in the process, and that is the end of his days. The next one comes along, catches the queen, removes the previous genitals and goes again, and that might happen 30 times. The queen will return to the hive with enough sperm for 6 years of laying, and she will not mate again or leave the hive unless the hive swarms. And that is the job of the drone, is to spread the genetics around. As far as work in the hive, they don't do any chores, they just wait to be fed, they don't do the dishes, they don't clean up, they don't do any foraging, they don't do any comb building. And if your hive loses its queen and the workers start laying and they're unfertilized, then what you'll get is a whole lot of male drones who aren't doing any work or any chores, and your colony will collapse. So it's important to have a laying queen, which is why we were doing our breed inspection today. So tell me if you can notice the difference between that, drones and workers. We've got a good selection here with a couple of larger bees with eyes that touch together in the middle, and then we've got smaller bees with eyes that are spread apart. So give us a thumbs up if you can see the difference between the drone and the worker. So drones also don't have stingers. They don't do the hive defending either. So they're good ones to pick up because they don't sting you. Great questions, keep them coming in. Beginner beekeeping today, no such thing as a silly question. We're in this hive making sure we have a laying queen, and we've found out what we need to. We could just put it back together, but we're enjoying watching and learning. Now this bee here is fanning away, and it's also turning its tail downwards, if bees have tails. And it's doing that to expose its Nasonoff gland, which is a scent gland that it's fanning that scent to say, here's home, because it knows something's gone awry. This comb's orphaned from the hive, and it wants to put out a scent so that all the other bees know where home is. If you look around, you're always finding interesting things.
So how often do you check your hives, and what kind of maintenance is involved in having a beehive?
Okay, so that really does depend a little bit on where you are in the world and what's going on. So chime in, let us know how much maintenance you do on your hive in your area. So this is a brood inspection, and this is an important part of beekeeping, and it's important to look after your bees and keep it serviceable. Now, the reason why we're looking here is because we looked at a month ago and found there was no queen, and that would have been the end of this hive unless we intervened. So that's a good reason to get in and do your brood inspections and to keep an observation from the outside of the hive, which these windows really do help in ascertaining whether you've got healthy bee numbers and whether you might have lost your queen as well. Now, so observing from the outside is great, but you will need to get in there and do your brood inspections, which often people find is the really addictive part of beekeeping. As to how often you need to do it, the requirements in Australia were a lot less. It was typical for a commercial beekeeper to make sure they're getting through every comb a couple of times a year in the brood nest, checking for pests and disease, and also as needed if they saw a colony wasn't performing or was weak. Now we have the Varoa mite, we're in the build-up phase. We need to be checking every month now, at the moment, to make sure those mites don't get out of hand. So that's increased the requirements. In other areas of the world, things have settled down, and you might only be administering a mite treatment 2 times a year, for instance. So that might be typical, say, in the UK. But chime in, let us know what you need to do in your area in terms of doing your brood inspections on your hive. In terms of bang for buck, if you like, or effort for produce, they are an amazing thing like that. You don't need a big garden, you don't need to be out there working that garden. They will forage on all the flowers from up to a 10-kilometre, 6-mile radius and make a real meaningful amount of produce to share for a very small footprint. You don't need to be there to shut them away every night like some farm animals. You can let them do their thing for months at a time, but as said, the requirements have increased here in Australia at the moment, and it's actually been wonderful learning to learn, you know, that's the silver lining, I guess, of Varoa coming. If you look at any positives from it, it's that we're in there learning a lot more about the bees, and it's a really important time to be looking after bees and making sure we're keeping our populations alive, making sure we're increasing our populations, because we're losing a lot of the wild hives, we're losing a lot of hives. And what that means for areas that don't have enough European honeybees is not enough pollination. So my father-in-law is hand pollinating his pumpkins, and that's simply because there's no bees down in the mid-north coast where he is at the moment. Now times will change, genetics will help, management will help, and the bees will come back. But if anyone wants to help, then now is a great time to look after bees and making sure we're keeping enough to keep our whole agricultural system going, as well as our own gardens.
Great. Question from Maddie, actually. I spoke with her yesterday on the phone. Set up her flow hive and has been painting and staining it. I think she got the Flow Hive 2 Plus. Just wondering, she's got a 5-frame nuke. The nuke's getting really full. How long does she have to leave it before she could put the bees in terms of any fumes that might need to go away before she adds them?
Okay, the nuke will be very tolerant. They will not leave once you put them in the hive. They won't leave their brood behind. So commercial beekeepers are usually dipping their boxes in the strongest chemicals they can find and painting it all sides so they can get a cheap pine box lasting for 20 years. Now, their bees will still stay in there. Backyard beekeepers tend to like to keep it just raw wood on the inside, keeping it natural, but your bees won't leave even if you've painted both sides of the box. So you'll be fine to put your nuke in when you're ready.
Great. Now Rosie's up on the Sunshine Coast and is just waiting to put the super on. Her hive had gone queenless. I think what she's saying is put in a new, hoping that it's hatched 10 days ago. So her question is, Cedar, how long before she should check the hive again to see if there has been a hatched queen before she adds that super?
Okay, so checking whether you have your hive is queen right is important. So if so just correct me again, Trace.
Yep.
Did she put in a queen or was it a...
I'm not, she thinks maybe one's, she's saying, I've estimated a new queen would have hatched approximately 10 days ago. I'm not sure why her hive went queenless in the first place. So now she's wondering when to check it.
Yeah, okay. Well, if you're inserting a new queen you've gotten from a queen breeder, they do say just wait a week and that will increase the chances of survival. You don't want to upset the process and the hive to ball the new queen that you've paid for. Now, as far as the hive raising its own, you can get in there anytime and check and see if you can find some eggs down the cells or young larvae, as we were looking for today, and that will give you some reassurance around that queen being there. However, if the queen's only emerged 10 days ago, then depending on the weather, she might not have mated yet or only just mated, and you might be hard to see that you've got young larvae down the cells. So you could wait another week and then it'd be easier to see that young larvae down the cells.
Fantastic. So can you have bees, well I guess we are, in the tropics where it gets really hot, and what can you do to sort of not make your hive overheat?
Yes, you certainly can. And the European honeybee Apis mellifera is incredibly adaptable from the extreme tropical areas to the dry deserts to the wet areas and the really cold, snowy regions that are dark most of the year. Even it's just incredible, the adaptability. So bees will work well in the tropics. You'll get an amazing amount of different rainforest flavours of honey. And what can you do to keep them cool? Well, first of all, we have put a screen bottom board at the bottom of our flow hives. And that was new to Australia, really. Not many people were doing that at all. We wanted to make sure we were well equipped for Varoa ahead, because it really does assist having that pest management tray below. And of course, that meant we could have the same hives here as other countries that already needed screen bottom boards, but it also acts as amazing ventilation. Down the bottom, you can put vents up, and that allows some air to flow through these vents and up through the screen at the bottom, or you can pull the tray out altogether for maximum ventilation. That will really assist the hives in an extreme heat wave. If you have the ability to situate your hive so that it gets some afternoon shade in summer, then that will really assist them in those really hot tropical areas as well. I wouldn't go for all shade, because in a humid tropical climate you may find that pathogens like chalk brood will get hold if it's too damp in the hive. So a bit of sunshine is good, but a little shade in the afternoon in summer would be lovely. Okay, sing out if you've got bees in a tropical area and what your honey is like. I'm going to put this hive back together. For those that are just tuning in, we were checking in to see if we had a laying queen. And we found what we needed to know. We didn't find the queen. We could keep looking for her, but there's no need. We know she's there because of the worker brood larvae down the cells. And we could pull another frame here, have a little look-see, see what's going on. And down these cells I can see the milky white royal jelly they're feeding to the very young larvae. Royal jelly is like mother's milk. The bees secrete, and that is the food for the worker bees when they first hatch, and also a queen when they first hatch out of the egg.
Ashley wants to move a flow hive from one property to another. Just some good tips, Cedar, in moving your hive.
Okay, like most things in beekeeping, there's always long answers, and it depends on what type of move you're doing. So we'll cover moving across various different types. So if you're going far, then all you need to do is get up in the morning really early before the bees are flying, add a wisp of smoke to the entrance to make sure they all go in, block the entrance with either our entrance reducer upside down, or you can put anything you like to block the entrance, some rags or some steel wool or something like that. Then make sure you've got adequate ventilation by taking the tray out altogether. Put a strap around your hive, take the gabled roof off, and then strap it well with some of those ratchet straps, or there's an Australian invention called M-locks which is built for that purpose, but basically you're strapping it so it's not going to fall apart in transit. Get some help to lift that onto the back of your ute or your trailer, and then you can transport that, and transport it ideally in the cooler part of the day. Put that in the new location, get in your bee suit, open the entrance and walk away, and they'll reorientate to that new spot. Now, bees are incredible at geolocating to where they are. So what will happen is, if they recognize the surroundings, if you've done a small move with less than say 4 miles, 6 kilometers, you've only moved a little ways, then the bees will recognize the surroundings and go back to the old spot. So you get a lot of foragers going back to the old spot. So what beekeepers either do is they will move a hive further, say 6 miles, 10 kilometers, leave it there for a month till there's a turnover of the forager bees, so none of them recognize the location, and move it back to the closer location. So that's one technique you can do. However, I rarely do that because it's a lot of work, and what I do is the reorientation technique, where you just move it to the new place, even if it's 100 meters or 2 kilometers away, and when you open up that entrance, you put a really leafy branch in front, or tie an old t-shirt in front of the hive or something to create an obstacle. So when the bees enthusiastically come flying out of the hive to do their foraging, they crash into something and go, hang on, something's different, something's changed. And that will be the trigger for 95% of your foragers to reorientate to that new location. And you'll see them getting a bit confused, flying around in circles and taking in the landmarks of that new location. You still get 5% of the foragers returning to the old spot, but for the most part, you will have successfully moved your hive without having to do a double move. One last way to move hives is if you're just going across your yard, you can either move it in one go and use that reorientation technique with the branch or the rag, or you can creep it across the hive at 1 or 2 meters a day, and the bees will follow. So you shift it, come back the next day, shift it, and so on. And that's the creepy bee move.
Sounds like a waggle dance. Might be a new dance move for your seeds. Hey, Brett's wondering, what does the smoke do?
So the smoke has 2 functions for us, and it's said to the reason why it has a calming effect on the bees, which is the main reason we use it, if you open up any old beehive without the smoke, you'll find a lot of them will try and sting you. You get stingers in you, then those bees will die. So although it may not be very nice to have smoke blown in your face, you're better off using it so you get a calm hive like this, and you don't end up with a whole lot of bees in an aggressive mood. So that's the primary reason, and it's said to do that for two reasons. One, you read in the bee books, they say it changes them into a preparation mood where they'll go and gorge on honey instead of wanting to protect the hive. They think, oh, a fire's coming, let's prepare. But another theory is it masks what we call the alarm pheromone, which if you've ever been stung by a bee, you can smell that smell that is the alarm pheromone, and that really sets off other bees to get more protective. So having some smoke will mask that alarm pheromone. And for that reason, if we do get a sting, smoking that sting site is helpful to mask that pheromone as well. So that you're putting your hand near the hive doesn't stimulate other bees to get protective. The other reason it's really useful is to move bees out of the way. For instance, if I wanted to have a look at this last frame here, or this frame next to it, but there was a lot of bees in the way, I add a bit of smoke, it riles them up initially, but will get them moving out of the way so that when I put my hive tool in here, there's no bees there, and I can simply lift it without squashing any bees. So really useful tool for moving bees on as well. Keep the questions coming in. Beginner beekeeping today, don't be shy. Throw your questions in. If you've got answers to other people's questions, chime in. It's always fascinating to hear your questions. We all started off as new beekeepers once, so get into it. Ask your questions. We've got time for a few more as we wrap this hive up. Okay. Now we've got a queen cup on this frame, which is quite cool. So I'm having a look at this frame and wondering what's on it. Now I can't get a good look, so what we need to do is shake the bees off. But before we do that, I'm just having a quick look for any queen cells, because we don't want to dislodge a young queen larvae from her queen cell. There's one here, it looks like a peanut shape. See that there? And that's if they want to raise a queen. It looks like it's empty. I can tell it's been unused because its edge is nice and round instead of, if it had been used and a queen had emerged, you'd see a torn edge on that. So what the queen cup looks like tells a story. Now if I want to get bees off a frame, it's a quick sharp shake diagonally across the hive, so if the queen is on there, she goes back into your hive where you want her. And then you can get a really good look at the frame and really see what I'm talking about. Probably this side of the frame, it's very cool. They've made a little hole through. This is naturally drawn comb. We've just provided the wooden frame. The bees have done their thing, so you often get interesting architecture like this. If you had a plastic foundation in, they wouldn't have this hole through the frame. These frames can accommodate plastic foundation or wax and wire, whatever you like. I like this naturally drawn, but other people like to put foundation in. It's up to you. You can mix it up. It doesn't really matter. But that's pretty cool. What you're seeing around here is bee bread. So that's the pollen that they've gathered from the flowers, pushed into the cells with their heads, topped it with their enzymes, a bit of honey, some special sauce, and fermented it into a sourdough bee bread, and that's the primary food for the developing worker larvae. Okay, that's pretty cool. Lots of different colours. That's what you want to see. They need a balanced diet of protein, and when you see nice healthy different colours like you're seeing here, give us a thumbs up if you can see those colours there. That's showing lots of different flowers they're foraging on, which is what we want. We want a variety of protein sources for healthy bees.
How many queens can you have in a hive?
So generally the hive will just keep one queen. Sometimes you'll see a mother and daughter relationship, but it's usually temporary. And I'm seeing young just hatched eggs down there in this region because I can see the royal jelly, the white milk down the bottom of the cell. So good to see the queen is here doing her thing. Your question again, Trace?
Oh, how many queens can you have in a hive?
So generally there's just one, but you can artificially manipulate your hive to have more than one queen. So some beekeepers who are really going after maximum production will go for what's called a 2-queen hive. So they might have a brood box down the bottom here, a queen in it, a queen excluder, a couple of honey supers in between, another brood box on top, separated by another queen excluder. And that puts the 2 queens far enough apart so their pheromones don't bother each other. They can't get to each other because of the 2 queen excluders, and all of a sudden you've got the laying power of 2 queens laying up to a couple of thousand eggs a day, and your hive will absolutely boom. However, it's a bit tricky, a bit more management, and it's often easier just to keep your hive in a simple configuration like this, where it's easy to get to the bottom box and look for your queen and so on. And I guess one advantage of running 2 queens is if one dies, which that happened to this hive, then the other queen will keep that hive going. So it'd be really nice if their genetics actually ran multiple queens. It's a bit of a weak spot in the genetics of bees and how they've evolved, is if they go queenless and don't get it together to raise another one quick enough, that's it. Colonies all over. And that's where we often intervene.
Right,
okay, putting this hive back together. Great questions coming through today. Now, when I put this hive back together, I want to make sure we're not pressing comb on comb, because what will happen is the small hive beetles, which are another little pest we get, can then really utilise that area where the bees can't keep them patrolled. So having a look, you can just put them back in the same order is the sure way. If you muddle them up, just make sure you're not pressing comb on comb. Okay, another question there, Trace.
Yeah, Phil actually, it's another queen question. So shut down the hive over winter and opened it up the other day. He only has 1 brood box on and found the frames were full of comb, lots of brood, honey, larvae, drones, but 2 queen cells. So wasn't sure what to do with them, but decided to put the super on anyway. The bees have moved up, it's all going well. Phil's question is, should he have left the queen cells?
You know, some beekeepers like to tear down the queen cells. Perhaps they've got genetics in there, they've purchased a nice queen from a breeder and they're worried about it being superseded, and they'll tear down those queen cells, and perhaps they're trying to minimise swarming by tearing them down. I would really recommend just leaving them as you've done, because you're letting the hive make the decisions. What you want to be doing exactly as you've done is making space in the springtime, which will be the primary thing to limit swarming. So you could either leave those queen cells there like you've done, or you could use them to make splits in another hive. Would be a wonderful thing to do, but it's sort of a bit fruitless running around whacking them down. They'll just make more anyway. So you may as well just leave them and focus on the other swarm mitigation techniques, which is making space in the hive either by adding more boxes, as you're about to do with your super, or taking some of the comb away. So you might cut out, if there's honey on the edges, cut that out, take that away to enjoy, put that frame back in towards the middle, and that's a good piece of spring management. So let us know how you go there, but it sounds like your hive will be unlikely to swarm if you're adding that extra space of the next box on top. Okay, let's put this next frame in. Now, getting a good look down those cells, and see what I did there. It's been very hot in the sun. I'm tilting this naturally drawn comb over. There's no plastic foundation or wax and wire to support that. See how it's leaning over a bit? So that's one learning curve with naturally drawn comb. If you tip it over too far, that could break out. If it does, don't panic. Just use a couple of rubber bands to hold it in place, and the bees will connect it back in place again. But you have to change your techniques a little bit if you're transitioning from the foundation frames to naturally drawn when it comes to tipping them over on their side. So there we go. Frames are all back in. Last thing to do is to press them together to make sure our bee space is good. You don't want them building comb in between frames. So that goes together there. And there, we thank these bees for being so patient with our brood inspection today, and for leaving them open for so long as we've just been busy exploring their little world. Now, earlier I spoke about cleaning off some of the wax off here to stop the frame sticking to the queen excluder. You could take that opportunity to do that now, or you could leave it there for the bees to use as a resource. So I'm just going to close that up now, and we'll go back and have a look at our honey harvest and see if while we were talking we got a nice jar of honey. Now, you've got our super lifter invention here, gets rave reviews, so many touching comments coming in from people who this is really helping. One of the major advantages is not only the easy lifting, but it's the easy placement back again. So I'm making sure there's no bees right where this contact area is, lining the boxes up like that, and now I can spend as long as I like. Normally you're just dropping the bees and whoever's in the way gets squashed, and that's all you can do. But if you do enjoy taking your time and trying not to squash bees as you go, it's a personal preference that in a way, then you can use the this nice gentle placement of the lifter, using a bit of smoke to clear bees out of the way. You lift up the arm like this, and you can go as slow as you like, making sure you're not squashing bees as you lower the box back on. And that's a game changer, to be able to, in such a controlled way, place your super or supers back. You can use it with a double box, and we'll show you that another time. But if you've got a double super, even if it's a 10 frame double and a roof on top of that, the lifter is very strong, will enable you to lift those as well. So here we are, the lifter there. It's simple to pack up. It's simply like this, and off the hive, and away you go, packing it up like that, and it can go back in your nice little carry bag. So let's go and have a look and see how our honey harvest went. And we were back over here at this fun little boat garden, and look at that, we've got a beautiful jar of honey there, which is a great thing to be doing in the springtime, in the lead up. If you've got a lot of honey stores still in your hive from last season, or you've had a winter that's been producing, then clear some out, make some room. That way you won't have the issue of too much honey down here in the brood box, which could trigger your hive to swarm. This is a fun little wicking bed we've just made, where we've got gravel in the bottom, soil on top of that, and that way we've got water in the boat. It's a bit opposite to normal boats, but the water's on the inside in this case, feeding the plants as we go. Fun little project, and a great easy way to make a wicking bed. Here is our honey harvest, and no bees got in, which we like. We've got the only piece of cleaning up really to do is this little honey tube, which is so different to conventional harvesting. If you've ever done it, you'll know what I mean. You've got many hours of mess to clean up, and really that's it. And in fact, you can leave it on the edge of the jar like that, and even let the remaining honey drain straight back into your jar. Look at that, gorgeous. Spring honey coming in. Thanks a lot for all of your great questions. If you have the answers to some of the questions in your thread, it's amazing to see you chiming in. It's just been such a pleasure to watch this community all over the world helping each other in beekeeping, and hearing all of your questions. So chime in, let us know what you'd like us to cover next week. We'll be back with another show and tell, bees, flow hives, beekeeping, and also have a look at the beekeeper.org if you really want a dedicated online course which has my father and I in good video training, but also experts from all over the world, from regions where we don't have expertise in. So that gets great reviews, also an amazing fundraiser, and it's free to try. So have a look at the beekeeper.org if you do enjoy good quality video training and you want it organised in a nice course for you to go from square one right through to really deep knowledge in beekeeping. Thanks for watching. See you again, same time next week.